Order the Human Resources Appointment and Equity Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 21st. Council Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Here. Ms. Conwell. Here. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Is there any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one has signed in.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 7th meeting?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. If you'll read the first item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2020-0001, adopting various changes to the Cuyahoga County non-bargaining classification plan.
Mr. Buchanan, if you'll step up and give us an overview of this resolution.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Albert Bushaheen, the Classification and Compensation Manager for the Personnel Review Commission. PRC routine maintenance and department's operational needs necessitate the creation of 2 new classifications, the revision of 14 classifications, and the deletion of 4 classifications. None of the revisions have changes in pay grades and therefore will not have a fiscal impact on any of the incumbents in these classifications, and none of the classifications recommended for deletion have any incumbents in them. The PRC approved recommending these to you at their December 4th, 2019 meeting. All the modifications were prepared by the PRC Class and Comp staff who have worked with the Department of Human Resources and Department Management to ensure that they're fully apprised of these recommendations. In accordance with the PRC rules, the proposed changes were posted on our PRC's website for your consideration today. Madam Chair, I am requesting second reading suspension of the rules I don't think we can split them out, but the new classification of job coach will primarily be assisting with the corrections officers at the jails, and HR and the Sheriff's Department have deemed this to be a critical hire. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, I'll open it up to my colleagues for any questions. We'll start with Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Albert, how many job coaches are you hiring?
That I don't know. They typically don't share that information with us. I can certainly ask HR if they have that information and email all of you after this meeting.
And so the job coach position is to assist with hiring further COs, is that what you're saying?
It's to help with their performance once they're on the job, to help them succeed while they're on the job. They have a very high turnover in these positions, and they're trying to do whatever they can to assist them to stay. It's much easier to help them stay than to recruit and keep hiring new corrections officers.
I'm trying to think of what the name of the positions were before, the HR assistants, or what were they, that they were put into each department?
Madam Chair,
I'm drawing a blank at the moment of what they were called.
Councilwoman Conwell, there are HR assistants, but those classifications are used within the Department of HR to assist in the administrative HR functions. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
To follow up, are these bargaining? These are non-bargaining?
These positions are non-bargaining. They're part of the non-bargaining class plan. What the future holds, that we'll see, but they are non-bargaining at this point.
And what's the salary range?
The recommended pay grade for the job coaches is pay grade 8A, and I don't have the salary schedule in front of me, but again, I'll email you the number of job coaches they intend to hire along with the dollar amounts for pay grade 8.
All right, are there any additional questions? Councilman Miller?
Regarding the positions that are being deleted, Madam Chair, to Mr. Buchanan, are any of those positions having their duties being incorporated into unclassified positions?
Madam Chair, Councilman Miller, no. Simple answer is no. Matter of fact, the 2 of the classifications being recommended for deletion are due to Metro Health taking over these duties.
Okay.
And with the deletion of the positions that Metro Health have taken over, does this eliminate all of those positions that were once filled, that we once held that Metro Health now?
I believe so, but I will confirm that. We have been deleting them as Metro Health takes these positions over, but I will confirm that as well for you.
Okay. Are there any additional questions, comments, or concerns? There being none, I'll move this to the full body of the council under second reading suspension. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. If there are no additional questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council Clerk, if you'll read the next item.
Resolution number 2020-0007, confirming the county executive's reappointment of Sue Biagiante to serve on the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging Board of Trustees for the term January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2022.
Director Pomerantz, if you'll give us a little bit of background, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging has an opening. What was previously submitted with that was that Ms. Biagiante was a reappointment. I just wanted to make clear that while Ms. Biagiante had served before, and it was not a consecutive term, so this is not a reappointment, but appointment to the Western Reserve Agency on Aging. Cuyahoga County has 2 appointments to this board, and Carol O. Dayton has served her terms, and Ms. Biagiante is being recommended by the county executive to take her place.
Director Pomerantz, I understand you said we have 2 appointments, so both of the appointments with this recommendation will be filled.
They will be filled. The other Cuyahoga County representative is Sam Thomas III, and he is serving currently.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues if you have any questions for Ms. Pomerantz. All right, there being none, Councilman Miller.
Just wondering who else appoints to the area agency?
The board consists of 23 members, 4 appointed by Cuyahoga County Executive, and 1 each appointed by the counties of Geauga, Lake, Lorraine, Medina, and 2 ex officio members. Then there's also 13 at-large members who are appointed by trustees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sue Biagiante, if you'll please step forward. State your name for the record. Give us a little bit of your background and tell us why you would like to serve on this board.
Okay, Sue Biagiante. I've been involved in working with and on behalf of seniors my whole professional life. The last 20 years at Jewish Family Service Association as the Director of Older Adult Services. And I've worked with the Area Agency on Aging really starting in the 70s when we had a home-delivered meals contract through the Older Americans Act, and then several other contracts through Older Americans. Then when Passport came in, we were contract providers through the Passport program for many services, meals, home care. So I've worked with the area agency for 50 years, I guess. And then I've been on the board, and I've served on the board previously, and I was the treasurer and the secretary of the board, and I'm happy to continue working with them. I think they're a great agency. They provide lots of services for the seniors in our community. Excuse me. And as they've expanded to manage care, it's included many, many more seniors that they can provide services for.
All right, thank you very much. How did you learn about the appointment opening?
I was contacted by Doug Beach, the CEO, asking me if I would consider being reappointed to the board.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.
Just wanted to ask, Madam Chair, to Ms. Biagiante, are you on COOP? Are you a member of COOP?
Yes, I'm a member of COOP, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, we are pleased, privileged, and I'm grateful for your willingness to serve in this capacity. I think, and I'll yield to our honorary parliamentarian, this needs to be amended to an appointment rather than a reappointment. So I'll make the motion to amend this to an appointment. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. It will make a motion to move this as amended to the full body of the council. If there are no objections, may I have a motion?
So moved.
second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very
Okay,
much.
Thank you.
If you'll read the next item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2020-0008, confirming the county executive's appointment of Michael W. Chambers to serve on the Cuyahoga County Community Improvement Corporation Board of Trustees for an unexpired term ending 10/15/2020.
I'll turn it back over to Ms. Pomerantz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Cuyahoga County Community Improvement Corporation was incorporated in 1982 for the sole purpose of advancing, encouraging, and promoting the industrial, economic, commercial, and civic deployment of Cuyahoga County. The corporation serves as Cuyahoga County's review agent for industrial revenue bond financing and economic development lending activity. On behalf of the county executive, we are pleased to nominate Michael Chambers for an unexpired term ending 10/15/2020, replacing former fiscal officer Dennis Kennedy, and hope that you will consider his appointment.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Any questions for the director? There being none, Mr. Chambers, if you'll please step forward, state your name for the record, give us a little bit of your background, and why you'd be willing to serve.
Sure. Mike Chambers. Right now, I'm the fiscal officer. Background for me, I lived in Cleveland all my life, West Park, Camps Corner area. Father of 5. I still have 2 children at home. One's at DePaul as a freshman, another one's at St. Joseph Academy High School. My wife's a Cleveland school teacher. Been there for 30 years. Once again, I a graduate of St. Ignatius, Cleveland State University, so I started my employment with the county back in 1990, so my career spans over 30 years. In 1999, I joined the City of Cleveland as the cash manager. I led a team that was responsible for the reconciliation of over $1.5 billion at the City of Cleveland. I soon was promoted to the assistant controller, and on a daily basis from then on, I work with state auditors for the audits of the City of Cleveland. I also prepared the CAFR for the City of Cleveland, which is their comprehensive annual financial report. In 2001, I had an opportunity to come back to the county within the county engineer, and I became the fiscal officer. It's kind of ironic that I'm become the fiscal officer once again. I held that position for 12 years until the new government came, and then I was promoted to oversee the creation of the Department of Public Works, which for many of you know was the county engineer, the sanitary engineer, and central services, which was the facilities and the kennel and print shop, mailroom, all of those other agencies. I led that until 2017 when I was promoted again to the operations and finance administrator within Public Works. And then, as you know, in October of 19, I became the interim fiscal officer. So my qualifications, basically, I have a diverse background in accounting and finance. With over 30 years of experience, I've worked with auditors, both internal, external, ODOT, state auditors, so I have a very strong audit background. I've worked with many of the mayors and managers and service directors in Cuyahoga County communities. As Councilman Gallagher knows, I've also worked extensively with the 3 trustees in Olmsted Township. So I believe I've got an excellent reputation and a history of getting the job done. I've always taken work very seriously and take pride in it. And I've always left a place better than I found it. So one of the reasons I'd like to be on the committee is I feel that I've been in Cleveland all my life. I feel responsible, and I like to take the opportunity to look at these loans and do my best to make sure that the county's getting everything that it should, and I'd like to be part of it.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, Ms. Pomerantz, this position is required to be filled by the fiscal officer. Is that correct, or
I believe that it's
or someone from
not
the fiscal
required
office?
from the fiscal officer, but there are positions that are part of CCIC that are encouraged to have members of the Cuyahoga County, but it is not a requirement of the fiscal officer. Michael Mays is here to answer any deep questions on that, but it is not required. No.
Okay.
We like him for his qualifications beyond just his title.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, Michael May, Economic Development Administrator of the Department of Development. There are 11 seats on this board, 5 of which are occupied as known as the county class. So we've got private sector, 6 people, 5 people from the county, or at least identified as having some attachment to the county. So we have, right now, we've got several people that does not have to be from a particular department, but we do have Susan Infeld from the County Planning Commission. We have Matt Carroll from the Executive's Office. We have Khalil Sarin from County Council. So basically what the executive tries to do is populate these 5 slots with people that have either a financial acumen or have been working with the cities, or in the case of Mr. Chambers, we have a number of arenas and areas of expertise that he brings to the table, public works and things like that, so that we can have good sort of analysis of these projects as they come forward. Because as you know, we're not simply being a bank here, but we're trying to push various economic development outcomes of this, job creation, and solid development for our neighborhoods and the like. So that's where we are. In this case, it happens to be that the fiscal officer, Dennis Kennedy, was in this slot. The administration felt that it was logical to have his successor come into this slot, at least for the unexpired term through October of this year.
Thank you. And Mr. Chambers, you're currently serving as the interim. Are you seeking that to be a permanent position?
Yes, the county executive appointed me, I think it was January 2nd, the fiscal officer, so I'm going through the confirmation process with you guys pretty soon.
Okay. And, well, that answers my questions. Are there any further questions from the committee? Going once, going twice. Okay, there being none. Thank you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I understand this needs to move to the full body of the council.
I'd like to ask one question, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Miller.
The question is whether you anticipate that the CCIC will have any role in the question of any incentive package relating to Sherwin-Williams.
Councilman, I have to defer that. As you know, I'm new to it right now, so I don't know yet, but I would assume it would.
To Councilman Miller, that's unclear as of yet. The crystallization of the incentive package is yet to be formed. The nature of, I think, much of the financial assistance to this project will not be the typical loan that the CCCIC would underwrite, if you will. The role of the CIC is to basically underwrite the strength of the ability to pay back a loan, so that they look at the company's finances, they look at a real estate pro forma, they will look at things like coverage ratios and loan to value ratio. In this case, this is going to be a bit out of that realm, and it's going to be more in the manner of incentivizing the project and the company to stay here. So my sense is that this will not go to CIC. It will be brought directly to council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I believe there was a motion and a second. If there are no further questions, comments, or concerns?
There hasn't been a motion or second.
Okay, I'll move this to the full body of the council under second reading suspension. Do I have a second? All right, it has been moved in second. If there are no additional questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Council Clerk, if you'll read the next item into the record, please.
Resolution number 2020-0009, confirming the county executive's appointment or reappointment of various individuals to serve on the Cuyahoga Community College Board of Trustees for the term January 17, 2020 to January 16, 2025.
Director Pomerantz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Tri-C Board is comprised of 9 members, 6 appointed by Cuyahoga County Executive and 3 appointed by the Governor of the State of Ohio. Members must be residents of the Community College District, and we are pleased to support the reappointment of Helen Forbes Field for a 5-year term, 1/17/2020 to 1/16/2025, and also for a new appointment replacing Jerry Kleschheimer's, Mr. John Scory, a 5-year term, 1/17/2020, expiring 1/16/2025. Both the reappointment, Ms. Fields, as well as Mr. Scory are here today, as well as Ms. Claire Risacco, who supports the Tri-C Board to help support any other questions you may have. And we respectfully submit and hope that you will consider these appointments.
I'll open it up to my colleagues for any questions for the director. All right. If there are none, we'll start with Mr. Scory. If you'll please step forward, state your name for the record, give us a little bit of your background and why you'd like to serve on this board.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is John Scory. I've been involved with Cuyahoga Community College for over 35 years, where I graduated from. And I believe in the mission. I believe in everything the institution brings. Affordable education is something that we must sustain. The access programs, mobile classrooms, all the things that we're doing. I'm really a supporter of our workforce development group and job creation and job training and the job certificate program. So I've been a member of the foundation board for a little over 5 years. I currently chair the foundation board, and I'm looking to be able to provide even more to the college through this seat on the board and to continue to give back. I serve currently on a number of boards, so I understand what it means to be a board member, and I'd like to bring that experience. I think I have a network of business community contacts that, again, we can touch and reach out and continue to hopefully provide job opportunities for folks that need jobs in our communities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scory. I too am a proud graduate of Cuyahoga Community College. You said that you understand what it takes to serve on the board. How did you learn about this board appointment?
I was contacted by Dr. Alex Johnson to see if I was interested, and I certainly was, and we continued the process.
All right. And as the president of First Energy, you talked about workforce development. Can you give us a little bit of your vision as it relates to the workforce development program and First Energy, how you might be able to collaborate in that area?
Sure. As far as First Energy, we have a number of programs with the college. The most notable is our Power Systems Institute. It's a 2-year program that we put approximately 15 to 20 folks into in our line side, and then there's a substation side that we put about 10 folks a year in. We've graduated well over 100 folks through the program. It's a 2-year program. They go to college at Tri-C for 2.5 days a week. They come to our training yard for 2.5 days a week. They complete the program, they get a 2-year degree, and then they start at a very good wage, upwards of $60,000 with full benefits, to be a power system utility worker. So that's a program that we've had in place. It's a national award-winning program in the utility industry, and we've had several utility companies model that. We've shared it with their community colleges in other states and other areas. We utilize the fleet maintenance group to train our mechanics. We utilize corporate college for leadership training, as well as we have done a diversity and inclusion survey through the corporate college and utilized a lot of the skills and things that, again, that community college institution brings. As far as other areas, I've been working with the Board of Visitors with Dr. William Gary to get other businesses involved with Tri-C. My vision would be is everybody brings a job to the table. If we get 100 companies, we're putting 100 people to work. Had an opportunity to accompany Dr. Alex Johnson and Dr. William Gary to Washington year before last to give a briefing on Capitol Hill, and was extremely proud compared to the other community colleges on how many programs we have and also the success rate that we have. So I think we have a total gem here, and once again, just looking to be more part of it and whatever I can give back to a place that, I know it's kind of corny, but the tagline is where futures begin, and it's certainly where mine began.
When you talk about some of the programs that you described, are there, I'm not sure, are there scholarship opportunities relative to some of those programs that First Energy supplies dollars for?
Yes, right now, if you get into the program by meeting the qualifications. We also offer tutoring in case it's needed to get in. We pay full tuition. So all you have to do is successfully complete the program, your tuition is paid for, and you go to work.
And the reason I ask is I've heard a little bit about this program, and I know that First Energy is one of the companies, if I'm not mistaken, that gives opportunities to citizens that are re-entering society. And I really, I think that's very important with the disparities in the African American community particularly. So the scholarships do, oftentimes felons are prohibited by law from getting Pell Grants. Is that the same with your scholarship dollars? Just curious there.
No, we take a look at a number of things. It's time that has passed, what type of a felony it was, and we have the ability with our human resource policy to waive that and bring folks into the program. In fact, I've been working a lot with Dr. Reverend Cavanis and Pastor Aaron Phillips. I'm very proud of the fact that not even just that program, but we've brought a lot of folks that needed jobs into our meter reading groups, into our warehousing, investment recovery, and the really thing that we're happy with, we've had 4 folks over the last 2 years complete these power line programs and now have a 2-year degree. And I think it's opportunities that, folks might not have had otherwise.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. We'll start with Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Mr. Scurry, when was this program started?
This program was started 2010.
Okay. How many have been through the program?
We've put probably well over 100 graduates.
Okay. And how are the candidates selected for the program?
There's a list of criteria. We do orientation programs. We actually bring folks out to our training yard to kind of demonstrate the job and let them try some things. Some folks don't quite understand. It's not a job that, everybody can do and understands. Fear heights, we put them in buckets, we do some things. Then there's a college entrance, exam that they have to complete and have to qualify. If folks truly want to get in and they're short on a little bit of that, we have tutoring sessions available, and a number of students have taken advantage of that and have gotten into the program.
Do they reach out directly to you, or can they also access it through Tri-C?
They can access it through Tri-C. They can access it through First Energy.
Do you mind sending us the list of criteria?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, there being none, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
out. It's really important to this body, and I think to our constituents, to get to know the candidates that are being nominated. So thank you so much for taking your time out today.
Thank you, Madam
All
Chairman.
right. If our next candidate for reappointment, Ms. Helen Forbes, if you'll please step forward, state your name for the record, give us a little bit of your background and why you'd like to continue to serve.
Well, good morning,
morning.
Chairperson Brown and members of the committee. Thank you very much for having me here this morning. I'm Helen Forbes Fields, and I currently serve at United Way of Greater Cleveland as Executive Vice President and General Counsel, where I've been at United Way for a little bit over 3 years. Prior to that, I practiced law full-time with Forbes Fields and Associates for 31 years. And my practice was primarily focused within employment discrimination and wrongful discharge cases. So I like to say I've been involved in fighting the good fight for a very long time, for in fact, my entire career. I've served at Tri-C, as we commonly know of it, for a little bit over 5 years. I was contacted by County Executive Armin Budish to serve in that role, I believe in 2015 or late 2014. And I'd like to say that it's been a privilege for me to play a very small role in the education and providing the highest quality of education to over 50,000 students in our area, receiving either associate degrees or attending our acclaimed certificate programs, many of which John Scory has just outlined. I've also been able to participate and see the support of the college by Cuyahoga County in approving the bond financing to upgrade our campuses. And just this past November, in terms of the support of the levy, which will ensure that the college is in good operation for many years to come. And I would say over the 5 years that I've served on the board, I've been very focused on our own construction program to make sure that we have an adequate number in terms of MBEs and FBEs who receive contracts through that construction of our campuses. And I'm happy to report that we have exceeded the goals. I believe it's between 20 and 25% in terms of ensuring that minorities and females are not only hired to work on the construction program, but receive contracts for those projects. President Alex Johnson and his team, I believe, are very good stewards of the college, and in particular, he has increased the graduation rate at Cuyahoga Community College to 17%. Many of us would think that's a pretty low number, but actually that 17% exceeds the national average in terms of graduation at community colleges. And prior to President Johnson's arrival, the graduation rate was in the single digits, perhaps about 6%. You should also know that Tri-C is held in very high regard around this country in terms of the community college, its attendance, and its operation, and the fact that it has numerous award-winning programs that we offer to the community. So I'm proud of this asset. We all should be proud of this community asset, and I certainly hope that you will decide to reappoint me to continue to play a small role in the success of Tri-C. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the 5 years that you've served on the board, what would you say is your greatest contribution?
I think probably the work that I've done and the impression I've tried to make at the college about the importance of having MBE and FBEs very much involved in our construction program.
Okay, thank you very much. And then what would you say are the greatest challenges the school currently faces?
Well, certainly one of the challenge would be the students that attend from Cleveland School District and making sure that they are adequately prepared to come into the college and that they can graduate within a good amount of time. I think the average is about six years, and we want to make sure that in particular, our Cleveland School District students are prepared and are able to graduate. That's one of the challenges, and I think also to bring in more students at that high school age to enter into college. But I believe the average age of the students is about 25 or 26 years old. Is that right, Claire? 28 years old, and we know that probably is more so our target audience, but really to do the work to make sure that high school students know that this is an option, it's a wonderful option, an asset in the community, and that they would receive the highest type of education that we can offer in our own community.
Can you speak to the high school program where the students are able to graduate with an associate's degree? Do you have any insight on that and how those students are selected or targeted?
To receive an associate?
Yeah, I know now there seems to be an increase in high school students taking some of their classes at Tri-C, and when they graduate from high school, they're also graduating with a diploma from Tri-C, and able to go on to their four-year college as a junior. So, can you talk to about that a little bit?
Right, and that's been a very successful program. In fact, we just had a Martin Luther King program this past weekend, and we have a student that's receiving a dual degree. He'll receive his graduation, his associate's degree, not only from Tri-C, but also his high school diploma in the fall. In the spring. So it's been a wonderful program, a great way to attract high school students to also consider Tri-C. In terms of matriculating even further beyond high school. And we also have the Say Yes program that's being enacted with the Cleveland School District right now, and we'll see greater numbers of students from this Cleveland School District to attend Tri-C as a result of Say Yes program. Many of you know that involves wraparound programs, wraparound services that will be offered to the Cleveland schools for every student, as well as scholarship dollars. And so we expect to see an additional amount of students as a result of that program as well.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues. If you have any questions, we'll start with Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, Ms. Fields, I was in fact very surprised to hear about the 17% graduation rate. Can you tell me what happens to the other 83%?
Well, were you surprised to hear it was 17% today?
That it was so low, yes.
Yeah, and actually for community colleges, it is not. I think when I first came on the board and I saw an email that came across that our graduation rate was a much higher rate, and I saw at that point, I think it was about 15%, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, why was that worth celebration? But when you start to learn that the numbers were actually about 6% prior to President Johnson's arrival, he has worked very hard in implementing programs such as the Access Program and making sure the students have more mentoring and help during that first year of college or certificate programs to make sure they have the type of assistance that they need so that they're successful in graduating. So actually our 17% right now exceeds the national average for colleges graduation. So in that way, Cuyahoga Community College is a standard bearer among other community colleges around the nation. So actually, we're doing a wonderful job, Clear.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I could also add to that, that's the graduation rate of those who come in the first 3 years of getting their degree. But every year that somebody stays, most students actually take 6 years to get their degree because they're coming part-time. So that 17% increases dramatically as you go each year beyond that. But the federal government asks us to report in as a sector of community colleges with that graduation rate in the first 3 years. So County Councilman Miller, it actually is higher as you go year to year beyond that first 3 years. But it's increased dramatically, and you're so right about community colleges nationally having that number. So many of our students work and they don't come full-time. It usually takes them longer to complete. So that's why you're seeing the number go up, because we're really focused on completion. But frankly, most students take 6 years to complete. Thank you.
So with that in mind, if you were to, do you have the data available for the 6-year completion? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Ms. Forbes Fields, the students who take advantage of the early college program, are they paying tuition now while they're in high school? How does that work?
I'll let Claire give you that information.
The program is called College Credit Plus for the students. They do not pay tuition. Their high school pays the tuition, and the state also kicks in to help pay that tuition. So that's how it's funded, through the state primarily, who picks up that tuition.
Not a lot of students take advantage of that, huh?
Oh, no, we have over 3,500 students as of last year. We might even be higher this year. We usually rank in the top 5 colleges or universities in the state in the number of high school students taking College Credit Plus. We're one of the biggest programs. Last year, we had 52 high school students earn their associate degrees before they earned their high school diploma.
And that leads into my next question. Does Tri-C keep data on how many students get employment or further their education?
We try. It's not a required data point in the state, but we do the best we can. We do a graduate survey every year to track our graduates because we want to know those numbers. So we're always looking for ways to frankly track our graduates. If they return the survey to us, which sometimes is challenging, that's really the issue, but we do try to track where they are. And we have really great graduation success stories, frankly. We have career services that actually helps place students in jobs. And that, by the way, service is also open to the community.
And my final question, the strategic plan for Tri-C, is it a 5-year or
It
3?
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did that start right when the levy just passed?
No, it actually, we're actually updating our 5-year plan now. It goes to 2022, and we're updating that as we speak. So when I send you the 6-year completion numbers, I'll send you a copy of the overview of the strategic plan.
Okay. I'd like to come in and talk about that.
Would love to. That would be great.
Any further questions from the committee? Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mrs. Fields, again, thank you for your service over these years. I, too, have spent time focusing on MBEs as well. So I kind of just want to compare notes a little bit. We focused on MBEs, but I've also tried to focus on the workforce and apprenticeships as well. Have there been opportunities to kind of have those conversations as well, contracts, workforce, and apprenticeships?
Right. Well, I certainly mentioned that we have exceeded our goals, not just in contracts, but also workforce numbers. So that would mean the people that are actually on the ground doing the work, as well as contracts that are going out to construction companies that would be MBEs and FBEs, and making sure that we're meeting several goals that way as well. And apprenticeship programs, Claire again may know more about that, but certainly we have apprenticeship programs that we work through the college in terms of programs that are available and certificates that are available that way for students.
It really is in a better place than Tri-C in terms of
Absolutely.
that aspect. I was coming more from the perspective of, in the construction work, the negotiation with the unions and those things as they bring in that workforce, getting those percentages from them, and their commitments for apprenticeships, minority participation in apprenticeship and workforce. Those numbers. That's where we spent a little time. As far as most recent, I would say the Q. We were able to negotiate with them certain percentages. 17% was one for the workforce on the Q, and commitments for apprenticeships too. So that's kind of the path or strategy that we used here.
Yeah, and I've been involved in this work for a long time, and what you find, unions want their people to work too. And so when you're able to communicate exactly what the requirements on each job, for the most part, they follow along because they want to make sure their workers are out there and have the jobs as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you exceeded your goals. What were the goals that Tri-C had in place?
Now, I believe it was between 20 and 25%, but we can provide that number, the actual number. I just had a report at one of our last committee meetings.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming down as well and your willingness to continue to serve. If there are no further questions, comments, or concerns, I will move this to the full body of the council under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved in second. If there are no additional questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. If you'll read the next item into the record, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 2020-0003, an ordinance enacting section 302.03 of the Cuyahoga County Code to provide for the approval and adoption of an electronic equipment and communications policy to be applicable to all county employees.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Madam Chair and members. Pat Smock on behalf of the Department of Human Resources, and I'm joined by my colleague from the Department of Information Technology, Jeremy Mio. He runs the security team for the Department of Information Technology, and he can provide much greater detail on this item than I can.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Mio, Department of IT. I'm the Information Security Officer within the Office of Security Research within the Department of IT. This before you is the electronic equipment and communications policy. A lot of this is a standard language from the previous HR policies and procedures manual. It is requested to be adopted to the new HR handbook with talking with both council staff, the internal auditor, as well as the state auditor, as well as PRC, human resources, and others, it has been recommended to have this as its own policy, as well as referred to in the HR handbook. This policy states acceptable use within electronic equipment and documents within the county executive in regards to electronic equipment and communications. I can go into the specifics of each policy section. However, the base of the policy has been updated for language as well as compliance. Policy expectations, privacy expectations have also been updated to include new items within the Inspector General's office as well as the Law Department. And again, other new technologies have been added within the acceptable use and prohibited use within this. So I kind of leave this in the questions for yourselves.
Can you highlight some of the new things that were added?
Yeah, there was updated language that provides more detail on the purpose, scope, and responsibility. Those were separated into different sections because of the vast use of electronic equipment today. In the privacy expectations, we added Law Department as well as Inspector General for accessing information for business purposes. In the accepted use section, very, very small language is added for additional information based on new technologies and standards, as well as in the prohibitive use section. I can go through each section one by one as well.
I'll open it up to my colleagues for questions. Should I see your hand, Councilwoman Conwell? And then Miller.
I would like you to go over some of the new stuff if you wouldn't mind.
Definitely.
And then I'll ask my question.
I'll start right at the in the policy purpose section right here. A lot of this language stayed the same. We did specify that non-executive agencies and offices on the Cuyahoga County Executive Network are ensured that they're compliant with this policy or an equivalent policy. We did put this to the Technical Advisory Committee as well with all of the non-executive agencies that use IT services through the County Executive's Office. That was, we also updated to be applicable to federal, state, and local laws. Then the add of both scope and responsibility have been expanded as well. The scope went into more detail, especially within users as defined as employees, contractors, consultants, and temporary employees. Let's see, that was really the section of the scope that was specified. In the responsibilities section, due to various change within the county executive since the last policy was revised, a lot of this has changed. Again, the Department of Information Technology has a chief information officer, as well as my team who does the responsibility of oversight of this policy that was specified out as recommendations from HR and law. Any inquiries or comments will be going to the Department of IT. That was also recommended by Department of HR as well as law. I assume that going forward that HR analysts would be highly involved in any type of questions that pertain to any policy, but that's why the policy is also within the HR policy handbook as well. There's a small section within the HR handbook that will have this, and this will just have its own policy. One of the reasons that this policy has been the strategy of this policy to be outside the HR handbook was because of how often it has to be updated and should be updated within electronic use and technology. They recommended that so it doesn't get involved with all the other language within the HR handbook. And HR can speak more on that. I know that they have an item after that that this entails and is involved with as well. Compliance is a completely new section as well. Again, with all of our compliance requirements within HIPAA and credit cards, as well as certain revisions within the ORC. We wanted to make a specific section for compliance. This was reviewed and added in through law department as well. Am I going too slow here, or is this good?
No, you're fine.
Okay. If I skip over something, please ask questions.
I do have a question with regards to the users under scope. You said that is a new or expanded definition. What was it expanded from?
So, without having the old policy directly in front of me, the specific was the amount of contractors, consultants, and temporary employees that we have, or volunteers, that might not have been defined, I would say, specifically. I think it's still covered all of them. I think it's just trying to get more, as many volunteers we have, and other types of consultants and temporary employees. We just want to be very, very clear in that definition, especially as newer technology comes out and we have a lot of consultants and contractors that have access to information and access to technology that they didn't maybe have that type of infrastructure set 5-10 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Privacy expectations. A lot of this is the information that was in the previous policy. However, with the new county charter, section 1501, section 7, the Inspector General's office, access was put into here as recommended by law, as it should be in here. That's a newer item that wasn't in the previous policy because it didn't exist. Other things in here were specifying the law department as well as department directors that might have specific business use cases to look at electronic communications at any time through a request process. A lot of that was just spelled out a little more in detail than previously. In the acceptable uses, again, a lot of these items have been reworded for some of our newer technologies. So some things that were taken out were the use of pagers and other types of technologies that is not as relevant and obsolete. Some of the specifics were adding some of our federal standards and guidelines for compliance and standards that we have. A lot of it was also, I would say, taken out a little, so employees have a little more cleaner policy, and a lot of this stuff will refer to the county internal systems for specifics, since it changes so frequently. Some of the information would be, just as an example, number 6 there. It says use best judgment on protecting mobile assets, county data, and access to county systems. Refer to the county intranet for additional guidelines. All of those change so much. We have phone refreshes going in so often with new mobile devices. Having any more specifics in there would probably just confuse employees, as well as make it outdated to have this policy updated every probably 6 months. So some things like that were kind of thinned out inside of this policy, so people know that they are what they have to do and what they have to refer to. Some standard items in here, again, no real changes, but again, password and account management guidelines, don't share your passwords, lock your computers, things like that, some basic security practices. One thing that was added in here is number 10. I would say that it was in the previous one, but it has been added to be more specific. And that would be users are responsible for following appropriate technology approval processes for purchase and download of new technology, systems, and equipment. We have the Technical Advisory Committee. A lot of those safeguards are set in place by dollar amount. As I hope a lot of you are well aware of, a lot of technology is very cheap nowadays. It can be purchased almost for free or almost no cost. We want to make sure that users are aware of that, especially with the amount of departments that we have within the county. The prohibited uses, I don't think that there were many changes other than language changes in here. I think as number 13 was always in there, I think that we added number 14 to have a little more specifics of providing confidential or sensitive information about Cuyahoga County employees, data, or systems to outside parties. There's a lot more processes in place around that than there were previously. Within the web blogging section, I know that there were a lot of general changes here because we do have web blogging standards and guidelines set by the communications department, and we went through their office as well. This would be more so within their area of when is it appropriate for a Cuyahoga County official to blog about the Cuyahoga County government in certain circumstances or not. That would be upon their official duties. Or if, for instance, a department wants to have their own official blog and social media account, and this is where that kind of section's in there, and that's more so within the communications department, internal policies, but it is referred into here. And I believe that is kind of the end of the...
Is number 4 new under the blogging?
I know that everything in the blog section was rewritten. That is not a new statement. It was within the old policy as well.
All right.
But I do want to note that that on the bottom page there, there is a note that users may be exempt from restrictions in the course of legitimate job responsibilities. And as much as a policy is there to enforce, there are lots of exceptions. And those exceptions have to be documented and approved upon.
Any questions from the committee? We'll start with Councilman Miller and then you, Councilwoman Conwell.
Madam Chair to Mr. Mio, is this policy going to be sent to the Administrative Rules Board?
I believe that we discussed between the law department and council staff if this should go to the Administrative Rules Board or not. And I know that that was in their determination that since it will be encompassing in the HR handbook and that handbook has to go to council for approval, that it wouldn't have to go to the ARB. But I think that if it has to go to the ARB, then it will go to the ARB. But that's more of a question for the Human Resources and Law Department.
And you mentioned about updating. It sounded like you said that this policy would be updated more frequently than the handbook. Does that mean that there will be times when the version of this policy in the standalone version would be different from the version that's in the handbook?
The version that's in the handbook is just a summary section of the different policy sections within this policy. It's not the full duplicate of this policy, and maybe HR can explain it a little bit better, but it is just for employees to be aware that there is another policy such that of the travel policy, and that hopefully all the sections that we include in the HR handbook won't have to be updated over and over again, but that when an update does come forward, it only has to update that specific policy, which employees will be communicated and aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Conwell?
Councilman Miller asked one of my questions, but will this policy be accessible on the website?
Yes.
Okay, and how often does your department expect to update this policy?
With technology, we will probably look to review this quarterly. I hope that I don't have to update a policy ever, but probably I would see every 6 months to a year having a revision in this policy. It also depends on the type of electronic communications and technology that the county executive, has at its hands and goes forward with if it needs any specific language within this added. So there are a lot of variables in that, but I hope not to be more than twice a year.
Okay.
And that would be excessive, I think, in my experience.
Okay, so in going forward with the HR policy, you're gonna implement this policy. So anytime that you do changes or update, it's probably a question for Pat. The employees are just gonna get a copy of the updated, they're not gonna get the whole HR policy. We're not gonna print that out, are we, going forward?
I hope that we never have to print any of it out. It will all be through either the learning management system or a similar system to let employees electronically know that there's an update. I'm sure that this will also be intertwined in a lot of onboarding and HR training as well. So I hope to never have to print out, but I think that any change, like I think HR does with a lot of the changes in the HR handbook, is that we'll try to highlight the specifics. So if there's only 2 sections added, we would be putting a 5 to 10 minute update of these are the 2 sections added. There isn't like 15 other pages you have to read, so people know exactly what's happening. I would agree in that.
And how are we, Pat, going to notify the employees of when there's updates and changes? So they're held responsible once there's updates.
Absolutely, Councilwoman. As Jeremy mentioned, this will be referred to in the handbook that this policy exists, and when changes are made to these policies, they'll be distributed to the employees, and we'll be working with IT to get an electronic sign-off from employees so that we know that they're aware, and there's a record of electronic signature, and that's one of the goals the auditors would like to see as well, on both the handbook and the electronic policy.
And we will have some hard copies available of this, correct?
We always make hard copies available for those employees who aren't internet users generally in their job duties, correct?
And did I hear you say you would be reviewing this quarterly?
Well, internally, we would be reviewing this as well as just a lot of IT standards and processes we would try to review quarterly, at least biannually. So we would probably put this forward. Not only this, but there are a lot of other IT processes that need to be reviewed on a frequent basis, and we would just add this to the list.
And prior to this modification, when was the last time this policy was updated?
Before my employment here.
Which was, how long have you been here?
2013.
Okay.
So probably, I think it was actually revised in June of 2013. I was employed here in 2013 in August, so I think right before my employment, from my understanding.
And just, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Prior to Jeremy joining us here at the county, this was part of the employee handbook, the policies and procedures manual, I should say the prior policies and procedures manual, it was removed from that. So any updates at that point in time would have been through the manual. A major overhaul was done in 2011. I'm not aware of the 2013, but I'll defer to Jeremy on that. But it's been some time, no doubt.
So we intend to go from 7 years to quarterly. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I would say that it certainly should have been updated more frequently than every 7 years. And I think this is one of the goals of separating it out. There are multiple reasons, I think, to separate out from the handbook, but this is certainly one of them because I think it was seen as sort of an HR policy, and we really need the expertise of the IT department as new technologies roll out. So that's why I'm glad that Jeremy and Catherine Tkachuk also worked on this very hard as well, that those folks are adept at knowing what's changing in technology, and this standalone policy is, I think, a little easier than updating the handbook, and I think that'll lend itself to more frequent updates, potential updates or reviews.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
All right.
And on the quarterly mentioned, we would put it as a quarterly item within the Technical Advisory Committee to review this in our public meetings quarterly, just even if there isn't a change, just so all other TAC committee members are aware as well.
And I think it might be fair to say, even though it may not have been updated then over that time period, hopefully there was some review. Maybe it didn't require changes over the course of time. So, but I'm just curious about how we're going to move forward. Were there any other questions from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Councilman Jones.
Can you speak to the violators of the policy, or at least the previous policies, what the level of it was, if any, and just give us a sense of what the challenges were?
Councilman, that is, it's really one of the reasons that this is referred to in the employee handbook is that there are potential disciplines involved with these sorts of violations. I'm not involved in labor relations as deep as some other members of the Human Resources Department, but it does include up to and including termination, depending on your misuse of the materials. And that's why, to the chairwoman's point, it's really critical that we update this more frequently than we have in the past. I can't get into specifics. I don't know of specific situations, what disciplines have been attached to particular employees who have violated the policy, but I know that Labor Relations has worked through that with employees, and they have been held to task.
Okay, thank you.
Who is in charge of labor relations?
And who handles our labor relations? Who?
My colleague Eric Miles is in the back of the room right now, and he's our Director of Employment and Labor Relations for the Department of Human Resources.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councilman Miller.
I'll move that we refer this ordinance to the full council for second reading.
I'll second that. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you'll read the next item, please.
Ordinance number 2020-0004, an ordinance providing for modifications to and adoption of the Cuyahoga County Human Resources Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual to be applicable to all county employees.
Good morning again, members. Pat Smock on behalf of the Department of Human Resources. This is a tag team with the previous item, and these are some changes, recommended changes that we're bringing for your review to the employee handbook. The handbook was approved by this committee and council in 2018, and what we found is it's sort of a living document. That is to say that as we go through the daily work of running the county, we find that there are strengths and weaknesses with the language, and maybe some updated language is required in the handbook, and those are the changes that we're recommending here today. I'm happy to go through them individually. If you'd like me to, I'm happy to answer any questions you have at any point in time. Madam Chair, would you prefer that I go through them individually?
That might be helpful. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. And if I speak too quickly, please let me know, because we've been living with these for some time. Just a quick background. As I mentioned, these have been brought to our attention by employees, by concerns by employees that we serve, and also members of the Department of Human Resources. We put together a committee and we reviewed a lot of changes, and again, we foresee them, these changes and additional ones coming forward with some regularity in the future. The first change that we're recommending is in section 6.04, and that's really just about direct deposit of pay and payroll deductions. And what we've done is rearranged some of the language. We just moved the charitable contributions section out. It was sort of in the middle of the insurance section. And then we added the word optional to retirement plans. And the reason is we just want to make sure that there was a distinction between optional retirement plans and differentiating that from OPRS, which all of our employees must participate. That's a mandatory retirement plan. The other thing that's key is that we moved union dues from the mandatory to voluntary deduction section, and we deleted fair share fees due to some legal decisions over the past few years. Fair share fees is really something that doesn't exist any longer, and union dues are voluntary. Participants in the union can choose not to participate in the union dues as well. So that's sort of the highlight of section 6.04. It's really a reorganization and that change to union dues.
Okay.
Section 6.12, there's just an inadvertent mention of exchange time in 6.12. The title is End of Employment Final Paycheck. So an employee's leaving the county. Employees who are exempt, that is exempt from overtime, can receive exchange time hour for hour. If an employee works more than 40 hours in a week, they can receive exchange time hour for hour for that. Exchange time is never paid out. If you leave the county and you have exchange time on the books, it just goes away. There's no advantage to that. The reason we're taking that out is in the end of employment final paycheck, exchange time is mentioned in that section as if though it might be paid out on some at the end of employment, and that is never the case. And we just want to clarify that by removing that exchange time from that section. The next changes, these are fairly significant language. There's a lot of language changes, and I'll explain the reasoning behind them. 6.13, delayed openings, early closings. This is something we just had, as you may recall, the county executive allowed employees to leave at 12 noon on the day before Christmas and the day before New Year's. And so that's considered an early closing. This language in the delayed openings, early and closing section, we added some language about inclement weather, emergencies, or events impacting operations. We wanted to make sure that there were reasons, specific reasons, that in regards to these early closings and delayed openings. You know that we've had inclement weather days. I think we had 2 last year where employees, due to the cold, were allowed to stay home. We've certainly had emergencies. We've had power outages and other things that have caused employees to be sent home at various buildings, et cetera. And of course, I know we're all planning on a Super Bowl parade upcoming this winter, and that would be also an event impacting operations. We did this for the Cavaliers parade. We just want to make sure that we're clear that it's not always just an emergency that we can early close or delayed opening to a building. And then we added in also that suspension of operations is something that we put in there as well. Based on some legal advice. We also put in there specific pay provisions that can occur during an early closing, for instance. And these are past practice. Most of the changes that we have here in this handbook, again, are based on current or past practice. And the practice is currently that an employee who must work, let's say tax collection downstairs on New Year's Eve, those employees stayed. Those employees who are non-exempt, that is overtime eligible, they can receive compensatory time for working in addition to their regular pay because they had to stay and other employees got the opportunity to go home. Employees who are exempt from overtime, they can also receive exchange time again, which is never paid out for staying. And we just wanted to specify that that's a possibility that occurs, and historically it has occurred. The examples that I used for New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve, we allowed employees to earn, those who had to stay and work, up to 4.5 hours of exchange time or compensatory time for staying. That matches what their coworkers who had the opportunity to go home received. So that section right there is where the majority of the language changes are, but you'll see it's sort of the repetition of that non-emergency language, events impacting operations, and suspension of operations language. 9.02 is about premium pay.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, ma'am.
Just
Refresh my memory. What's the difference between compensatory time and exchange time?
Thank you for your question, Councilman. Compensatory time is overtime, basically. So an employee who's overtime eligible, we don't necessarily, and I'll get to this in a little bit, we don't necessarily pay them overtime immediately. They receive compensatory time at time and a half. That compensatory time stays on their books up to 6 months, and then it's paid out. So the employee has the advantage of they can use those hours, hour for hour, or they can wait 6 months and be paid out for that particular time. Also, and union contracts vary on this, but generally if an employee has over 240 hours of compensatory time, that's the cap, and they're paid immediately if they earn additional time from that. Exchange time is for exempt employees, those that are not overtime eligible. And again, that's that hour for hour. It's time only, never cash. That also has a 6-month deadline on it. It goes away after 6 months. And the limit on that is a little bit lower for those for those exempt employees. That's 40 hours. You can never have more than 40 hours of exchange time in your bank. That's for your use, basically, in the next 6 months because you worked over at a particular time. Okay. Any other questions? I'll move on to 902, which is premium pay. The section in 902 for premium pay in the current handbook is actually about 2 sentences long for premium pay. It says it may be offered in exchange for obtaining and maintaining a job-related professional license, certification, or formal demonstration of the employee's mastery of skills, knowledge, or competencies beyond what is required, and that it has to be approved by the county executive or designee. What we found is that there are a lot of employees who have particular licensure or certificates, and they have applied for premium pay. And what we wanted to do as a group was put some specificity to what premium pay can be. So in other words, it's not that I received a degree or I received a master's degree or I received a certification that may or may not impact my job role. So what we did was we built in specific language to limit the premium pay to non-bargaining classified employees. For bargaining employees, of course, that's contained in their collective bargaining agreement. who fulfill a need that offsets a potential expense to the county. And I'll give some examples. And there are 3 criteria, that one of which it must meet. One is a professional license that's legally required by the department. The idea is that this saves the department money. And an example might be, we have a wastewater license that the county is required to have. We have to have someone on board with that wastewater treatment license. If not, we'd have to contract with a firm that has that wastewater treatment license. And one of our employees goes and receives that wastewater treatment license. Their colleagues don't have that licensure. Should they receive a small stipend, a premium for having that licensure and keeping it active and updated? That's the first example. The second is the bilingual supplement. Employees who use their bilingual skills for their job duties to assist our customers during their workday. We've historically called that the bilingual supplement. We've included in the premium pay in this regard. And then the third is for exempt employees who remain on call during specified off hours, and we have some specific language in here. But the idea is that, again, you're in the sanitary engineer area, you're a supervisor, you have weekend duty, and you carry a phone with you at all times during the weekend. You have to be within a certain distance from your workspace. You have to refrain from the use of alcohol or anything that might impair you, and other rules and regulations that you must follow in order to receive that premium pay. Again, it is that not I, but a sanitary engineer supervisor takes on that role and maybe receives a small stipend for being on call during the weekend hours in a 24/7 operation and assigning employees as they go. So the premium pay section, again, what we really did was limit the scope of what employees might expect for premium pay. We wanted to say to them, this is exactly what you have to do for premium pay. It still does need to be approved by the department as well as the county executive. Questions about that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Miller.
Does the language totally limit the premium pay to the 3 examples that you put forward, or is there some language that says that there could be other kind of situations that would qualify if properly approved?
Thank you for your question, sir, and Madam Chair and Councilman. It does limit it to those 3, and we worked hard with the law department and our compensation team on this. It also mentions, as I alluded to, that it fulfills an operational need that offsets an expense the county would otherwise incur, and that it does satisfy one of those 3 criteria. It also states that it's made on a case-by-case basis, and the justification is written, as a matter of fact, as well. The director of the agency and the director of human resources approve of that in writing, and they renew it annually as well. We don't want folks to have a bilingual supplement and they move into a new role and their bilingual skills aren't used in that new role and they continue with that bilingual supplement. So annually, it's reviewed as well. So we're really building in parameters that don't currently exist, Councilman.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Does that include, to the chair, does that include the Sheriff's Department, number 3 specifically, I guess?
It would include all departments, but it's important to note that these are for non-bargaining classified employees and exempt employees. So at the Sheriff's Department, of course, great majority, Councilwoman, of our employees are bargaining unit employees. You're talking about potentially upper-level management employees that would do that. And again, that would be case-by-case, on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Please proceed.
Section 906 is about, we alluded this earlier, I did in response to Councilman Miller's question. This is about non-exempt employees for overtime compensatory time. We talked about employees can earn compensatory time rather than overtime, and then there is some built-in language that employees can earn overtime immediately. And one of the things that we would like to add, or requesting to add to this, is for compensatory time hours being earned immediately if an employee works on a county holiday. And this is the perfect time to talk about this. We did have a handful of employees in the building yesterday who are non-exempt or overtime eligible employees. They worked, they could receive overtime for working those hours in addition to their holiday pay. That's always been the case. And what we're saying to them in the current process is you can receive that 6 months from now. And what we like to say is if they want that overtime now and their paycheck upcoming for working this particular holiday, we think that's a benefit that the employee should enjoy, that they should be able to get that overtime at the time that they worked it if they work on a county holiday. 11.01, paid vacation leave, and I'll take paid vacation leave and paid sick leave together. There's clarifying language regarding prior service credit. In the new handbook, we built in a documentation process if you wish to receive prior service credit for working at another government agency and you bring that time with you to Cuyahoga County. It just, on our staff's, from our staff's perspective, it just appeared a little bit clunky. And so we're sort of going back to the old language, which is simply that you receive a letter on letterhead, signed letter, with the information from your prior, prior employer. And we then, once we receive that, we add that time in, that vacation service time or sick leave balance credit time. So it's really just, we made a change to the process. We created a form that we wanted the other employers to complete, and we just found that from our staff's perspective that it's easier just to go back to the old format, which was we receive a letterhead, we receive a letter on letterhead from that prior employer regarding that. We also, on the paid vacation leave, we've put in language that's in the Ohio Revised Code, again, just so it's available to employees, because employees don't always know this, and that is if an employee retires through a state of Ohio public retirement program and then comes to work at Cuyahoga County or then comes to work at another employer, that prior service does not count. They're starting anew once they retire from that program. And that's, again, per the Ohio Revised Code, but we just want to build that into the handbook so that employees are aware of that as they come, and we want that information available to them. Section 1102, just some clarifying language. Again, this is based on past practice, that employees have to be on a paid status the day before and day after a holiday in order to be paid for that holiday. That's always been the case. That is to say, if an employee doesn't have any time to utilize the day before or after a holiday, and so they're on unpaid leave, they would not be eligible for that holiday status. We want employees at work, obviously, for that. The other change in 11.02, and this is really maybe one of the few changes that will make a big difference, and this is a request by one of the departments in its Public Safety and Justice Services specifically. Currently, if an employee is off during a holiday week, so let's say an employee this week, Monday was our holiday, an employee is scheduled to work Tuesday through Friday, that is their set schedule, they work 4/10s, and they work in Public Safety Justice Services. They don't receive time off like most employees do, they receive a floating holiday for that Monday holiday. We built that in the handbook to allow those employees 30 days to spend that, to utilize that time. And Public Safety Justice Services, they just said we're very, very strapped in our supervisory area. They cannot always use that time within 30 days. They asked us to expand that out to 90 days. And obviously we don't want to see employees lose that holiday time, so we're doing that at their request. Okay. The last two items that we're requesting that you consider changes to the family medical leave language. The first one was language that was caught, and we appreciate the PRC when we ran this language by them. And that is that employees can request FMLA through the ERP system. And then secondly, that supervisors can request FMLA packages on behalf of an employee. Obviously, there are times when an employee might be incapacitated and unable to request either in person or through the system. And so we want to specify that supervisors also can request that FMLA paperwork.
And this is in section 11?
11.07.
Oh, 07.
Yes.
Okay.
Apologies if I went too fast. And I apologize too. Let me go back. I took 1101 paid vacation leave and 1103 paid sick leave together. Those are very similar, and that's about the prior service, current and past balance. 1107 is family medical leave, as I mentioned, that a supervisor can apply for an employee's family medical leave. We also added in holidays and suspended operations, and this is specifically, again, so that our employees are aware of this. This is actually based on a Department of Labor requirement, and that is that if an employee is on a continuous FMLA, so they're out, let's say, for 3 months, and a holiday falls during that FMLA, that day is considered FML time, and that's per the Department of Labor. However, if the employee's on an intermittent FMLA and that holiday falls and they weren't scheduled to work on that holiday, they didn't use FMLA time for that holiday, then that holiday does not count towards their FMLA. And we took that language directly out of the Department of Labor, but it's just something when employees on FML, they want to be able to refer to their employee handbook and know exactly what's happening with their time. And so we wanted to make sure that that specifies. And then the last thing is similarly, just so that employees are aware, we do have a donated leave program here at the county. It's in the handbook. It has been for many, many years. This just specifies that unused leave, if an employee donates to another employee and that leave time is not used, that leave time does go back to the donating employee. So it's used by someone at that time. And that's always been the case, past and current practice. We just want to make sure that employees that might be considering donating are aware that they get any time back that's not used. Okay. Those are the changes in 1107. And then lastly, Jeremy talked at length about the electronic use policy. These are the sections 1207 through 1209. This is where this comes into play. The decision was made in consultation with staff and the law department, as was stated, not to have the entire electronic use policy in the employee handbook, but to refer to it so that hopefully every time we want to make those changes that Jeremy mentioned, we don't have to come forth with changes to the employee handbook. So 1207 is a new section about electronic equipment and communications. Let me back up. The current handbook just says other policies, and so we split those out at the advice of the law department. 1207 is about electronic equipment and communications. 1208 is about the travel policy, which exists, again, outside of the handbook, always has. And then 1209 is about other policies. So we want employees to know that these are referred to specifically, and the language in each one is that employees are expected to know and comply with the policy, and they may be subject, as I said to the councilman, they may be subject to disciplinary action for failure to comply with the policy. So those are the changes. I will be frank with you, the recommended changes, I should say. I will be frank with you that since this document and this red line version that was sent to council has come forward, there are other changes. Just every day you realize things that maybe an employee doesn't know, an employee has a question about. The one FMLA policy that I mentioned about use of time, a holiday falling during FMLA time, et cetera, that came directly from an employee in this building. They were disappointed to know that we used the holiday leave based on what the Department of Labor said. And again, we want to put that in the handbook so the employees are absolutely aware of it. Having said that, we talked a little bit to your questions about changes to the electronic use policy. I think that we'll continuously come to council and recommend changes for their consideration to the handbook as we discover new things that our employees ask us about, or that our HR employees or PRC or law department, et cetera, want clarification of.
Now, you've mentioned a number of times the law department, and I only heard the PRC once. Were they consulted and included on these policy changes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We worked with the law department early on, and they reviewed these changes prior to us going to the PRC. I actually made a presentation at the PRC. That's why I asked, I think early on, I said if I talked too fast, I apologize. Chairwoman Southerington caught me for talking too fast at that particular presentation. But we did with the PRC, and the PRC director, Rebecca, sent over 2 suggested changes for us. We did implement one of those changes, which I referred to, and I'm drawing a blank on that now, in the policies as well, and took the other one under guidance for referral for future case.
I'll open it up to my colleagues if there are any additional questions, comments, or concerns.
I have one.
Yes, Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to Mr. Smock, I missed, can you just go over the sections? Just tell me the sections again prior to 6.12. I was trying to check off. I missed the earlier ones.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The section before 6.12 is 6.04. That's the direct deposit, 6.04 direct deposit. And again, that's moving that language around about the union dues, and also just sort of the optional retirement plans versus PERS, and then relocating charitable contributions. Just so the language is a little bit clunky right now. It talks about some benefits things, then contributions, then more benefits things. We just want to put it all together.
Okay, anything on the earlier page? Sections that-
No, prior to 6.04, we have no recommended changes, Councilwoman, at this time, but of course, may be coming forth to council as we review and move forward.
Thank you.
Councilman Miller.
To Director, can you briefly describe the item from the PRC that you took under advisement?
I wish that I could, Councilman. I'm drawing a blank. I might defer to one of your staff members. Mr. Nani, could you? Thank you for your question, Councilman. I'm asking for an assist from one of your staff members.
Phone a friend.
Yes. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. Councilman, that is 9.02, the section on premium pay that we did make changes to. PRC expressed a concern that this practice could be abused and urged the county to consider establishing some objective parameters around the practice to prevent such abuse. What their concern appears to be is that it's made on a case-by-case basis. And we understand that concern. Councilman, we battled with this language for a long time. There was back and forth, and the law department helped us settle on the final language. We wanted to build parameters around it, but we wanted to it's difficult to build absolute walls around it. So that's why we built in the case-by-case basis. That is to say, we didn't want necessarily, when you say an employee is on call, what does that exactly mean? And I think case by case, it's important to look at what that means exactly. And so we're looking into that. I think that 9.02 language, that'll evolve over time. Once we put this into practice and we see how it works, I think then we'll make an evolution on that as well. And so that's what I mean by taking it under advisement.
Okay, I think the language you currently recommended is fine for now, but it's good to see how it works out in practice.
Agree. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much for the presentation. If all minds are clear, I'd like to move this to the full body of the council under second reading. Do I have a second? It's been moved in second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Any miscellaneous business? Or are we done? Okay. All right, if there's no miscellaneous business, what I would like to ask of Ms. Director Pomerantz, if you could give us an update relative to the agency postings and notifications method that the gentleman brought to our attention in the council meeting for our next committee, that would be helpful. And if all minds are clear, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.